So again, welcome to the Clinton Presidential Center. Really happy that you're joining us tonight for a really important conversation about one of the key pillars of the Clinton Foundation, which is the Clinton Global Initiative, we refer to as CGI. And this is a timely conversation because our annual meeting in New York takes place in less than 2 weeks. So we are thrilled to have another program as we celebrate our 20th anniversary, really sort of underscoring the work of the initiatives and the work that the Clinton Foundation does here in the United States and all over the world. And CGI is really one of the most impactful programs that we run at the Clinton Foundation. In 2005, President Clinton launched CGI with the goal of harnessing the power of individuals, corporations, and governments to take action. And action there is the key word. Unlike anything before, CGI created accountability in the form of commitments to action, measurable solutions to real problems. There are still, to this day, a number of gatherings all over the world. Probably Davos is one of the best known. And while important conversations take place at those gatherings, what again makes CGI so unique is this commitment to action model, where people, to come back and to be invited back, they have to make a commitment to do something. And our team at the Clinton Global Initiative works throughout the year. This is not just a one-time meeting. CGI is an ongoing, it's the ethos and the nature of bringing people together to solve problems. It's something that takes place throughout the year. To date, CGI has facilitated more than 4,000 commitments to action, and that making a difference in the lives of more than 500 million people. So again, we measure the impact of CGI continues, and we will continue to measure the results because that is really what we are all doing. That is why we come to work every day at the Clinton Foundation, to figure out how to make people's lives better. One of the things I love about CGI is the synergy with the Clinton Presidential Center. There have been a number of commitments that have been made over the last several years, actually since CGI, since 2005, that we are able to bring here to Little Rock and to Arkansas, to the Clinton Presidential Center. Because being in a mid-sized city in the middle of the country, we have the ability to be very flexible, and we have relationships, so we can bring some of the commitments here and really innovate, kind of like the Clinton Center is a laboratory, if you will, for some of the really great ideas that take place at CGI. Most recently, I guess 2 years ago, I took the, at that time, new head superintendent of the Little Rock School District to CGI to investigate a program called HIP, which stands for the Health Information Project. And it is a peer-to-peer program for high school students where the 12th graders and 11th graders end up teaching a health curriculum, which is focused on mental health, social health, cultural health, and they deliver that to every 9th grade student. And Dr. Wright and the school district were fascinated with the data and the results and how impactful that program has been. And so he committed, after going to CGI and learning more about that, to instituting that program in every high school in the Little Rock School District. So this will be the 2nd year of HIP, and again, that's just another example of the synergy and the opportunities for us here in Little Rock at the Clinton Center to bring some of those really terrific, innovative ideas and turn them into action, which again is what CGI is about. So you didn't hear me come to this tonight to hear me talk about how fabulous CGI is. So tonight we're going to have some experts here talk about how CGI really reimagined philanthropy nearly 20 years ago, and how, as I have been talking about, it continues to take action on some of the world's most pressing challenges here in our country and again all over the world. Our conversation is presented in 2 parts, and I'm thrilled that we're starting this conversation tonight with 2 of my distinguished former colleagues from the Clinton Foundation. Penny Abeywardena used to be with CGI, and she now is International Affairs expert and former Director of Girls and Women Programming for CGI. And she is doing incredible work literally all over the world. Penny, it was so great visiting today and hearing about the incredible impact you're having, and so pleased to have you back here in Little Rock. And Bob Harrison, who is the former CEO of CGI and started some of the other early work at the Clinton Foundation with the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, and currently serves as a Clinton Foundation board member. We will never let Bob leave the Clinton Foundation, and he continues to make such an incredible impact. Bob and Penny, again, will talk about the origins of CGI, how it has evolved, because it has evolved, and how and what makes it continue to work. The second half, Bob will moderate a panel of recent commitment makers. Liz Dozier is here with us. She is the founder of Chicago Beyond and a CGI commitment to action maker. And Lorenzo Lewis, he is the Chief Visionary Officer of the Confess Project of America. And he will discuss how and why they became involved with CGI and how CGI has impacted their organization. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming and beginning this incredible conversation with Bob and with Penny. Thanks.
I don't know if this is on. Is this on? Yes, it is on. Excellent. Hi, everyone. I am Penny, and Stephanie, it is such a pleasure to be back. I think it's the first time Bob and I have been in Little Rock in a really long time. And how nice the sun came out for us. It's like, exactly, it's like, let's do this. Just as some background, I had the pleasure of being the girls and women's person from 2009 to 2014. And as much as I love CGI, part of the reason I'm here is because I had the best boss in the world for the 6 years that I was at the Clinton Global Initiative. Bob Harrison is a man that knows how to make commitments happen. And we had an incredible, I mean, those years were, I think, some of the most powerful in terms of impact. But Bob has been around since 2005, right? So you've seen the good and the bad of all things CGI. Can you tell us how CGI began?
Well, first of all, thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me back. I haven't been here now in 10 years, since your 10th anniversary celebration. And I'm thrilled to be back here. And I want to thank all of you, given the fact that it was pouring up until 5 minutes ago, for coming out and being here live. The beginning of CGI goes back to a fact that many of you will remember about President Clinton, which is that he was essentially a frequent attender of policy conferences all over the world. He was known for going regularly to Davos, the World Economic Forum in Davos, to the Aspen Ideas Festival, to Renaissance weekends. And on one plane ride back from Davos in January of 2005, which he had been to many, many times, he was speaking with the people on the plane who were with him. And he said, you know, I really enjoy coming to these conferences, in particular this one, but they bring together all of these influential people. We talk about all these very important global issues. And for all the years I've been coming, no one's ever asked me to do anything. It's a talk fest. It's all talk, no action. All cattle, no hat. So basically, he said on this plane ride, let's do an experiment. Why don't we try to convene a conference this year in September, when the UN General Assembly is in New York every year. All the heads of state will be there. A lot of them are his friends. All the CEOs of global companies will be there. The executive directors of NGOs, the presidents of foundations will all be there. And why don't we invite them to a conference, which I will host. And he said, there'll be only one requirement, which is that in addition to talking about the various global challenges that we all face, I'm going to require everyone who attends to make a public commitment to take action. everyone has to decide what that's going to be. I'm not going to tell them what it's going to be, but it can be access to education, access to health care, poverty alleviation, climate change, any of the big global issues. Let's just try to move the needle with the people who are willing to come to this. And it really was an experiment because he did not know if anyone would show up. He didn't know if anyone would make commitments. He didn't know if anyone would report on the progress of their commitments. It really was an experiment. So that September, we convened the first CGI meeting, and it was an incredible success. The fact was people were hungering, they were craving to have a reason to come to a conference other than just listen to speakers on a stage. They were really thrilled about being asked, required to make a commitment. So that was the beginning of CGI, and he decided to do it again. And I just want to give you an example of a commitment from the very beginning, because commitments are not obvious or intuitive. But as Stephanie said, they're new, they're specific, and they're measurable. That's the definition of a commitment. But an example, a good one from the early years, involves an Arkansas-based company, Walmart, who was a member of CGI, has been a member of CGI since the beginning. And they made a series of commitments at the very beginning, which I think perfectly exemplify what a commitment is. They worked with one of our other members, a partner of theirs in this commitment, the Environmental Defense Fund. And they created a series of commitments which were designed to reduce their global footprint, their carbon footprint. What they wanted to do was work with their suppliers, address 60,000 suppliers as part of their supply chain, thousands and thousands of products, and require them as part of this plan, this commitment, to reduce the size of their packaging of products sold in Walmart by 5%. That was the requirement. So that led to things like reduction of, or elimination actually, of any laundry detergent that was powdered in boxes as opposed to liquid concentrate in much, much smaller containers. It led to taking a lot of cardboard and plastic out of packages. And the result of this, over a 5-year period of these commitments being made to reduce the size of their carbon footprint, was to eliminate 200,000 diesel trucks from the road in the United States. 200,000 diesel trucks. It also saved billions of dollars for Walmart customers, for the suppliers, and for the shareholders of Walmart. So it's a huge win-win-win situation. And since then, as Stephanie has mentioned, over the years that we've had CGI annual meetings, we've now had 4,000 commitments made, which are operating in 180 countries around the world, and they're positively impacting 500 million people.
You know, yeah, it's funny because it starts with such a simple idea. I started soon after in 2009, and it was just the thing. In 2010, Foreign Policy said that CGI is not only sexier than Davos, it is also more effective than Davos and the UN. And part of it really just comes from, and I was on the client end. I used to work with the members, and it's not that they were just repackaging what they were already going to do. Part of the year-round engagement was also the team identifying who good partners could be and how we can cultivate that kind of networking. And it really just was like such a beautiful sort of amalgamation of like different factors coming together. But there was like a secret sauce beyond the obvious. And I'm curious what you think that secret sauce. We're gonna have different opinions because we approached it from different places. So let's see what your secret sauce is.
All right, well, I would say that there's several ingredients to the secret sauce. The first one is President Clinton's convening power. There is absolutely no question in my mind, having lived with this for the past nearly 20 years, that he is the convener in chief. In addition to what he was able to bring to the annual meeting, over the years that he has convened meetings, he's brought together 190 heads of state, 20 Nobel laureates, and the CEOs of virtually every major global company, the heads of every major foundation in the United States and the world, executive directors of virtually every influential NGO in the world. And these cross-sector collaborations are part of the magic of CGI, but it starts with President Clinton being the convener-in-chief. I think the second element of the secret sauce or ingredient is the CGI model itself. I think that what Penny was just describing as the commitments department works with the clients, with our members. It's the client-facing part of the operation is really critical because we do not bring people together for a meeting and expect them to scribble on a piece of paper what their commitment is. What we do is have people like Penny. She was a rock star in the commitments department focusing on girls and women. And what we do is we have people in that department working year-round with our members to help them develop commitments, and if they have problems, help them solve the problems and better implement the commitments, create partnerships with other members. And the entire approach is designed to be realistic. We're trying to turn what many people might make an aspirational commitment, like I'm going to solve climate change, completely ridiculous, into something which is realistic, like what Walmart proposed. I'm going to do the following things over a 5-year period. It's going to cost this much money. I need to partner with these people to do it, and I'm going to measure success by these metrics that I will tell you today. And that's what the people in this commitments department have done, and that's part of the secret sauce, because there is nobody else on the planet, even though many people now have conferences that do much more than talk. Many people now have incorporated or replicated some of the things that we started, but they don't invest in a commitments department that works with their members on a year-round basis. And then the final part of this model is keeping track. We ask people to give progress reports each year, and we keep track of that. We have a database. And our commitments department plays a significant role in using that database to understand what works and what doesn't work, who's a good partner and who's not such a reliable partner. And we can connect people. This is the other part of the secret sauce. We can connect people through different forums that we run so that they network and create partnerships on their own, or we intentionally create them for them. So for example, in 2008, there were hurricanes that were devastating to Haiti. And in 2010, there was an earthquake, which was devastating to Haiti. And quite a few of our members, about 50 of them, were really interested in rebuilding Haiti. So that we created what we called an action network, which brought together these 50 members. And we did it once a quarter, probably 35 or 40 times over the years in Port-au-Prince or in New York or in Miami. And they continually worked on their commitments and invested more and worked with more partners to rebuild Haiti as much as they possibly could. And that action network concept has been replicated in other situations around the world. But I do think that those are the key ingredients of the secret sauce.
Can I add one more? Mm-hmm. From my perspective, I think it was also the flexibility. So the teams, whether it was membership or those of us in commitments, as we worked with our members around their topics, there was the aspect of let's be realistic about what they can do, but a flexibility in how we could also position problems to identify new solutions. So I ran Girls and Women. He hired me as a commitments manager in education, because that's where a lot of girls' commitments were in girls' education. But over the period of 6 years, we also knew that we needed to mainstream gender. If you're talking about women's health or girls' education, it's not go talk to Penny and this crew. You need to be in the health conversation. You need to be in the education conversation. So there was that evolution internally about how we would talk about gender. Then we had so many corporations like Goldman, Exxon that were interested doing some work within Girls and Women, but for us to go deeper in the way that they would think about their philanthropy or their giving, rather than thinking about it for the 20 million that they're doing philanthropically, how does this impact their core business? Let's look at women along their global value chain, right? You want to address domestic violence problems because that means, a good chunk of your workforce may not be able to get to work. And once we were able to shift that tenor of conversation, the way corporations were engaging something quote unquote soft like girls and women's issues actually became like one of the major priorities they would think about when they looked at commitments. And I think that was something that we did with them and not for them. And I think that really is part of that secret sauce, is that we were able to work and like evolve with our members. Now, part of the evolution, too, is that we grew out of just the annual meeting. Bob just talked about action networks, but we became a presence around the world and in the US. And so I'd love to hear about that evolution.
Well, I started at CGI October 1, 2007. So it was after 2 years of annual meetings. And I had been, as Stephanie mentioned, working for the Childhood Obesity Initiative, the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, when President Clinton asked me if I'd be interested in becoming chief executive of CGI, which I jumped at. So my first meeting as CEO was actually an event at the Apollo Theater. And I was able to bring my daughter to this event, who was 13 years old. And what I learned was the event was the launch of what was going to be the first extension of the CGI model to a totally different audience. That was called CGI University. President Clinton's idea was to bring this commitment model to the next generation of leaders, college kids. So we went to the Apollo Theater, and it was an event that was produced by MTV. It had Bono, Chris Rock, Alicia Keys, Shakira, Wyclef Jean, and President Clinton on stage announcing the launch of CGIU in Tulane University, New Orleans, in 5 months from then. I walked out of the Apollo Theater, and my daughter looks up at me and said, "Dad, you have the coolest job in the world." And I have to agree, she's right. And then the work started. And for the next 5 months, we put on our first event outside of the annual meeting called CGIU, CGI University. We picked Tulane, by the way, because it was in New Orleans where Hurricane Katrina had recently hit. So we wanted to help New Orleans out. And it turned out to be incredible success. The students made commitments, believe it or not, in some cases way better than the grown-ups at the annual meeting. Two of my favorite commitments from CGIU are, one of them was an engineering student at Dartmouth who was from Nigeria, and he wanted to address the problem of counterfeit drugs in the developing world. Apparently 1 in 10 drugs sold in the developing world is counterfeit. Whether it's in a store or whether it's on the street that they're buying the drugs from, it's counterfeit. So he created a technology which allows someone to text a code that's imprinted on the medication, the bottle or the pills, and instantly it will send a text message to the phone which says it's either authentic or it's counterfeit. And the interesting thing is that it is paid for and therefore completely sustainable as a business by the drug companies, because the drug companies are very interested in making sure that their brand is protected and that people don't either die or get sick from taking counterfeit drugs. So he created a company, it's called Sproxel, and it still exists to this day. The second one, which I love from the early CGI years, is called Socket. And this was a woman named Jennifer Matthews, or Jessica Matthews, from Harvard. And as part of a class project, she created a soccer ball which harnessed kinetic energy from the kids kicking around the soccer ball in her old country, which was also Nigeria. And at night, you can plug a plug into the soccer ball, and it will allow a light to go on so the kid can read, or allow a refrigerator to operate so that food and medications can be refrigerated. Incredible. And that's also become sustaining. It's an NGO, which she's taking all over the developing world. So that was the beginning of the expansion of CGI to a new demographic group. It was kids. then President Clinton is relentless. He does not stop in trying to take a good idea and expand it and make it better and apply in more places. So his next idea was to take the show on the road. We had this annual meeting, which was in New York in September, 3 days every year, same time as the UN General Assembly. And that meant that people from far away may not be able to come to the annual meeting because it would take a week of their lives if they were to come from Asia. So we launched CGI Asia in 2008. And we sent invitations to leaders, public sector, private sector, civil society leaders, just like the annual meeting. We asked them to come and address global challenges, but to make commitments focused on Asia. We sent the letters to 27 countries, leaders in 27 countries, and we convened the meeting in Hong Kong in December, and they made commitments which were focused on Asia. And then we had to put this on hold because we got word while we were in Hong Kong that Senator Hillary Clinton, was about to become Secretary of State the following month, and her confirmation hearings were going to be in January. And so we put all future international meetings on hold while she was Secretary of State. And then we revived them when she stepped down, and we held 2 more international meetings. One was CGI Latin America in Rio, and then the second one was CGI Middle East Africa in Marrakesh. So those were the brand extensions that we created from what was the original annual meeting, then CGIU, and then CGI International in various places. The final one was CGI America. And this was an outgrowth of the great financial crisis when we needed economic recovery badly. And President Clinton had actually been in Davos in 2011 in January. I was with him at a lunch that he hosted at a restaurant on the top of the mountain for about 25 CEOs of global companies. And everyone around the table was saying, I think we need to have job creation, job training programs, STEM education in the United States to lead the recovery around the world of the great financial crisis. So he heard that loud and clear. And on the tram ride down, he said to me, how long would it take us to create a meeting in America that's focused on job creation? And I said, I don't know, 6 or 9 months probably we could do it. And he said, how about 3? And I said, there's no possible way we could do this. Our entire staff is working on the annual meeting in September. We don't have other people who know what they're doing. We can't do that. So we compromised at 5. And we held the meeting in Chicago in June of that year, 2011. And again, it was focused on job creation, job training programs, et cetera. And my favorite commitment from that meeting was one that President Clinton organized involving the AFL-CIO, 55 unions, involving state treasurers who were investors in pension funds, and companies that did infrastructure work. And all these groups came together, and the unions committed $10 billion of union pension funds to be invested in infrastructure projects, building and repairing infrastructure projects in the United States across the country. These are bridges and utilities that put people to work, put union labor to work, and it also produced predictable financial returns for the pension funds and for the investors in the pension funds. So it was a win-win-win situation. So those are the extensions of CGI from the annual meeting.
So we're starting to run out of time. One of my questions was about your biggest challenges, but I'm just going to answer that for you. That was President Clinton's expectations. And then team members like me, it's like, Bob, can I get a bigger budget? Hell no. So those are his biggest challenges. But I do want to wrap up on favorite moments and highlights of your decade as CEO. I mean, I think the Apollo Theater and having your kid think you have the coolest job in the world is awesome, but.
Well, on the program front, I think there were several incredible moments on the stage at the annual meeting that it will be hard to forget. One was in 2008, John McCain and Sarah Palin were running for president and vice president, and it was 1 week after the firm Lehman Brothers collapsed, went bankrupt, and the great financial crisis had essentially started. And in that environment where people were scared, everyone was scared, and Washington was trying to figure out what they could possibly do to avert what was becoming the great financial crisis, John McCain got up on the CGI stage and suspended his presidential campaign to go back to Washington to help solve the problem. And that made national news, of course. Second one, which I'll never forget, was in 2011, we had a session which was Archbishop Desmond Tutu on stage at the Sheraton Hotel in New York. And by satellite link, one of the very first times we ever allowed anyone to link in by satellite, but that happened because Aung San Suu Kyi was under house arrest in Myanmar. And we got her projected onto the screens at the Sheraton Hotel for a conversation on courage. That was the topic, courage, between Desmond Tutu and Aung San Suu Kyi. I'll never forget that. And on the commitment side, if I want to think of highlights.
Girls and women?
Well, I'm going to disappoint you on that. And the reason I'm going to disappoint you is because I think even you will appreciate that this was so desperately needed and life-saving that it was miraculous that it came through. And this was in 2014. You may remember that there was an outbreak of Ebola in Western Africa like nothing we had seen until the pandemic, the recent pandemic, but nothing like it. And it was essentially restricted to Western Africa. And our members looked to CGI from all different sectors to respond, to be a force for good in responding to this crisis. So the Commitments Department reached out to the governments of Sierra Leone and Liberia, to healthcare companies like Becton Dickinson and Merck, got them to supply for free, to contribute PPE, personal protective equipment, and medications. Reached out to foundations to contribute money to support charter flights of airlifts of supplies. We had NGOs that provided medical care on the ground in Western Africa. And we ended up having what was the largest airlift of medical supplies, healthcare supplies to Africa in history. It was 100 tons of product, life-saving product, beginning 2 days before CGI started in September of 2014. And then there were, I think, 5 subsequent airlifts. So it was 500 tons of material that was desperately needed in that part of the world. And I'll never forget, we had a session on the tarmac at JFK Airport as they were packing all these materials onto these charter flights to send them over. And just a miraculous outcome, and it was the result of a CGI coordinated commitment.
That's fair. That's a great one.
There were girls and women involved.
They were obviously involved. Thank you. My time is wrapped up here. We're going to transition to the second half of this program where we're going to hear testimonials from 2 commitment makers. The first one is Liz Dozier, who is with Chicago Beyond. And then following her is going to be Lorenzo Lewis with the Confess Project of America. And Bob will be in conversation with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny.
Can you all hear me okay? All right, so hello everyone, Liz Dozier from Chicago Beyond. I guess I'll start by saying this. In 2015, I found myself packing up my office. And I was packing up my office after 6 years. After 6 years of being a high school principal and turning around one of the lowest performing schools in the state of Illinois. And as I was packing my office, I had this question that was sort of rumbling around in my head, and it was this: what am I gonna do next? Did not know. A few months later, that question was answered, and I was in a conversation with Mark and Kimber Walter. And we found ourselves in this conversation really architecting and building out what today is Chicago Beyond. And so with an initial $100 million investment from them, Chicago Beyond was born. We are a foundation, a philanthropic organization that truly just engages in addressing systemic equity by backing those who are most proximate and who are closest to the issues. We do everything from make strategic investments to publish insights that help guide the work in philanthropy to leading national initiatives. Again, with this desire to drive change, to drive action, like what Bob was saying, and to do that in philanthropy, to do it in criminal justice reform, to do it in health and wellness and beyond. So ultimately, as I think about, starting that organization in 2016, and we've, now given away over $65 million to those across the country who, again, are engaged in this work, who are most proximate to the work, who are oftentimes, again, unrecognized, unseen. They don't have the fancy grant writers and those to really advocate, but they're doing the hard work, or individuals who are truly aligned to our mission. What was most important to me from the very beginning of that was that, we didn't set ourselves up as a traditional foundation, and that we set ourselves up from the beginning, similar to what I think of CGI, I think of Clinton Global, and that we had a mission to radically redefine what philanthropy does, how it shows up in relationship to community and to people. I know from firsthand experience, being a grantee, being a school principal, it's oftentimes, it's not set up for success in terms of like how a philanthropic organization engages. Therefore, I knew that how we do the work as philanthropists and as a philanthropy is just as important as what it is that we actually do. And so we show up in the work by working differently with our partner organizations, by relating differently to that work, and ultimately by noticing differently in that work. And it all starts with noticing, as I think about, whether it's a person or a population or a pressing issue, but really noticing what folks are up to in the world and really honoring that work with transformational funding. And so one of those issues that's happening in our society today, particularly here in the US, is around Black maternal health. And I'm sure all of us have, whether it's in hearing Serena Williams' story or in hearing the stories that have been most prevalent over these last several years, we've heard about Black maternal health. But just to ground us, and that knowing that with Black maternal health and Black women in particular, that regardless of what your zip code is, regardless of your educational issue or where you live in the country, that Black maternal health outcomes for Black women are historically abysmal. And so in 2023, Chicago Beyond Works in health and wellness, we decided, we wanted to make a commitment. We wanted to make a commitment to Black maternal health, and specifically to develop this fellowship. And so it was there that we applied to make a commitment at CGI, and were able to do so. And what our commitment entails is to find, again, leaders who are truly steeped in this work, who are oftentimes, again, unrecognized or unseen. They don't have, the fancy grant writers, but they're doing this incredible work in the field. And to really honor their work and to give each of those people who are part of the fellowship a $500,000 grant that essentially allows them to dream bigger, to sort of unlock their genius and to not be constricted by oftentimes not having resources and being hand to mouth. And so with that comes coaching and cohort support and so on. And that was our commitment. And I'm excited to say that we're going to announce our fellowship and the folks who are in the fellowship coming up in the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that at chicagobeyond.org. You can learn more about that. But in addition to that work, it is also about our criminal justice reform work, in which we have some exciting announcements coming with that in the next few weeks, really with our partnership and work with prisons and with jails across the country in terms of reform and around holistic safety. And so again, excited to be here to share more and to talk about this commitment today. So thank you so much. And with that, I will welcome up my colleague, Lorenzo.
Yeah, so it's so good to see you all. I'm Lorenzo Lewis. Again, I'm thankful Arkansas is home. I've recently transitioned to Atlanta, so nonetheless, I'm glad to be here. And I understand today is about speaking about my commitment to action and how we've been able to make a big difference in the lives of so many. And so I often get kind of hung up on where to start because we've done so much, but I think I'll start with my personal journey. So years ago, I found myself working in Department of Health and Human Services. I worked so hard to get my master's degree, and I had jumped a lot of hurdles in my prior years before. Born in jail to an incarcerated mother and was diagnosed with depression, and actually found myself here in Arkansas Juvenile Detention Center when I was 17. And so going to college was a major feat for me. As you can imagine, seeing myself go through early stage incarceration, the statistics of me going in and out of recidivism, not making it beyond that point was very slim. And so while working at the Department of Health and Human Services, I began to dream big. I felt that there was something inside of me that really was itching to give out more. I was not a rehearsed person in communication to go out and tell my story, but I had a friend that really encouraged me to tell more of my story, but that would help folks that look like me, that came from similar communities, that had went through a lot of the similar challenges that I had faced. And so I came up with the Confess Project, which is a national organization that focuses on training barbers and hairstylists and frontline workers to be mental health advocates. And this work was really started because I recognized that I was unseen and heard and not validated in my youth. And I wanted to find a way to create a model that would be able to do so. And so the work started out very hard. It was very challenging. The first few barbers that I approached, actually here in Little Rock, slammed the door in my face. And nonetheless, but it gave me more drive and competitive approach against continuing to do more, because I knew that there was something there. And I found someone who owned a barber school and a barber shop that opened his doors up, and he actually owned 5 different shops, and said, hey, that my place of business is your playground. Whatever you need to do, you can come in at any given time. You can bring researchers, therapists, whatever you need to do to continue to build this work and make this work strong. And so we started there in 2016, and we've been able to now reach over 200 barbershops and 52 barber schools in 35 states and 63 cities since then. So our work was cultivated with a few principles in mind, to train folks to be empathetic, active listening, how to reduce the stigma of mental health, as we recognize that we're in the mental health crisis that we're in right now in this country, is that we really needed a solution where everyday people can be involved, that we did not need to have folks that didn't feel because they wasn't qualified by a degree or a certification that anyone can get involved, because we know that there's such a shortage right now in our healthcare workforce, and particularly in our behavioral healthcare workforce. And so that's what the work that we've been able to do. Our commitment to action has allowed us to dream bigger, developing an amazing partnership with the Walmart Foundation, where it allowed for us to dream bigger about the young people that we were impacting. And so today with the Walmart Foundation, we've been able to develop an initiative working with young men and young women, developing them with STEM opportunities, developing them with opportunities that can help to not allow them to go into the justice system. We recognize my story, and individuals who go into that system is very challenging for them to navigate and have a positive life outcome. In addition to that, our commitment to action was also to build an evidence-based curriculum, and so we partnered with Harvard University to ensure that that curriculum has the of strong evidence that has been replicated now across many, many places. And in addition to that, training 1,200 stylists in the city of Atlanta. We're now reaching about 1 million people indirectly through salons and shops to went through our work. And so our commitment to action have bolstered our work in such a tremendous way and allowed for us to do so good. So again, thank you all for allowing me to share this today. Thank you.
Well, thank both of you for coming to Little Rock and for joining us for this 20th anniversary celebration. And I'd like to start with you, Lorenzo, because like Walmart and Heifer International right over there, your story begins here in Arkansas, and actually in particular in Little Rock, as I understand it. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what about growing up here led you, motivated you, inspired you to create the project that you just described.
So, living in Little Rock, it obviously in the early 90s, early 2000s, as you think about Little Rock, it went through a devastating era of gang activity and a lot of the challenges that it faced with poverty. What really encouraged me to do the work that I do was looking at my neighbors and my friends that were next door, recognizing the challenges that they had faced. That knowing that, as I talked about my story of working for the government, knowing that I had been around people who really had created, could help me understand ways to deliver solutions, and that knowing that the people around me did not have that same guidance and mentorship. And so being able to take that back to the place that I grew up in was very empowered me to empower others. And I think so proximity is something that I would say is something I've continued to now spread, and something that I took here from Little Rock that I've been able to continue to use.
I remember you also said at the annual meeting last year that your Aunt Daisy's beauty salon had some kind of an impact. Is that right?
Yeah, so my aunt owned a beauty shop here off Asher Avenue for roughly 20 years, and I went there every day after school. I took it for granted. I didn't like to be there because I didn't want to listen to a myriad of women talk about everything that was going on in their life, being a young kid. But nonetheless, those experiences allowed for me to become an innovator in the space of using that same experience. I'm finding my first mentor there, Sylvester, who was a barber, was the only barber there, and that relationship that we shared, for me not having my parents, really helped to catapult the vision that we have that we're spreading out across the country today.
Thank you. Liz, let me ask you a little bit about your background in particular. You were the principal at Fenger High School in the south side of Chicago, one of the roughest areas in Chicago. And while you were principal, as I understand it, your graduation rates doubled, your dropout rates plummeted, and your in-school arrests went from 300 when you took over to 10 at the end. So they literally vanished. Why didn't you try to become superintendent of schools in Chicago or secretary of education?
That's a great question. But no, I really look at it as, for me, it was always important to be connected to the work in a very particular way. And for me, it was about staying close to community and really staying close in relationship and in proximity. And sometimes those jobs, whether it's secretary of education or sometimes you get further away, you're further and from people. So for me, that was kind of at the forefront of my mind. But also I looked at it as there's just different pathways. And so as I thought about the end point, which for me was always about impacting people and impacting communities, I was just using a different vehicle. And I thought how incredible what it would be to really unlock others' potential and others' ability to transform community. And I saw firsthand in my work as a principal how many under-recognized, unseen people were doing really thoughtful and engaging and transformative work, but could never really get transformative funding. They might get the $500 grant here or the $1,000 grant here. Not that those things aren't good, because they are, but they it doesn't allow them to shift in a major way what's happening. And so when I thought about the new road or the new vehicle I was going to use, this idea of what Chicago Beyond could be was really, really powerful to me.
Let me switch to CGI and your involvement in CGI. We had a hiatus for about 6 years after 2016 and then restarted it in 2022. And both of you have been involved since we restarted it with CGI 2.0. And I'm curious, let's start with you, Lorenzo. What is it that prompted you to get involved? Why did you get involved with CGI? What did you expect from getting involved with CGI?
You know, initially it was a long process, to say the least, but it was worth it. It was a beautiful due diligence process that actually allowed for us to rethink about how we do and what the work that we do and why it was so important. And so, you know, just being connected to CGI and a lot of the members of CGI, obviously the audience that CGI convenes have been a tremendous opportunity for us, an example to being connected to CDFIs and communities that we work in that help continue to catapult and scale and grow our work in places where we may not have been able to. And so those are just examples in which CGI have been able to bring. Also, medical partnerships like the Boston Medical Center is one of the groups that I think about that we've met through CGI that we've continued our partnership and work with. So those are just a few to mention that I feel has been really great in our tenure. So.
Same question, Liz. How did you get involved in the first place with CGI, and why did you get involved?
Yeah, I was just doubling down on what Lorenzo said. I felt like I wasn't really sure, honestly. All of us have been in spaces of, nonprofits and foundations, or been in at least proximity of that. And oftentimes people will say what they're going to do. For me, I wasn't really sure what to expect. And so I just really went in with this open mind of open to the possibilities. And I was so pleasantly surprised in that when I think about our fellowship that we're launching, the Fellowship for Black Maternal Health, when I think about one of the key factors of us being able to do it and do it at this very particular place, we're going to announce this in the next couple of months, this class of fellows and so on. It really was through the partnership with CGI, both in networking us in with the field, the healthcare field, and folks who are particularly working on maternal health, but also that there's a particular pacing that is happening when you're in a cohort and when you know that, okay, 365 days from now, I'm going to be back in this space, and what will I have done? And so it allowed, I think, the pacing as well as this network effect that's been really powerful as we've developed this fellowship throughout the year.
So relative to expectations when you started, would you say that your expectations have been met?
Exceeded.
By a lot?
By a lot.
By a little?
Yeah, I mean, because you think about, I can just I'll tell you, when we were in New York last year at CGI, one of the conversations that my team had, we were invited to a healthcare conversation, a kind of a private roundtable, and just to be in a space at a table with folks from around the country who are thinking about the exact same things we're thinking about, maternal health care, but are thinking about them from their own unique lens, whether it's their geography or the folks that they serve or from a research perspective, and to be able to hear what's happening in the field, and then to be able to, again, network, make those connections and have it inform our work has been powerful, and it was, just unexpected, but from the very start of that commitment.
Excellent. Lorenzo, same thing, impact of CGI.
Yeah, absolutely. Echoing what Liz said, I was also invited to a funders roundtable to talk about mental health and financing in the mental health realm. And it was very liberating, to say the least. It was very inclusive to, obviously, I'm someone who's, built an organization, but not being able to be amongst those other folks that work in this space, that fund this work, was an advantage. It gave me a way to think broadly about how we position ourselves to continue to make further impact. And so I feel like that was a benefit, but also just the common networking that came along with so much field. I think I can go on and on about that, but it's truly been a catapulting experience, just staying connected within the ecosystem. So.
Well, it's obviously great to hear, gratifying to hear both of your reactions. I used to put on with Penny a session at CGI meetings called Navigating CGI. And it was basically an introduction to brand new members about how to take advantage of being at our meetings, whichever meeting it was, how to navigate CGI, sort of tips for them. And I'm curious what each of you might think or might say if a new member of CGI were to approach you and say, you seem to have done pretty well as a CGI member in your brief time. Do you have any tips for me as a brand new member?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very inquisitive, so I've asked a lot of questions to the commitment team, and over the last couple of years, but particularly in the last year, we've continued to grow for just being open to asking questions, and I think just really stepping out of your comfort zone has been, I was come from I think in this space it was odd to have someone to reach out to at times and say, hey, I'm working on this idea, could you give me some feedback? And there was always a staff of the commitment team that was able to help us through a lot of those challenges. And so I think just having that ambition is key in being able to step out of your comfort zone and advance that. So.
Last year, President Clinton talked about, at CGI, talked about this idea of curiosity and wonderment and awe. And as I think about the answer to your question, it really is that. I would encourage like a new attendee of CGI to lean into what President Clinton said and approaching this with curiosity, with the openness that Lorenzo said, because there are so many possibilities within the context of the commitment and the support that CGI actually provides to walk that commitment into actually real life.
Are there partnerships that you have created that resulted in concrete funding, for example, as a result of CGI? Or is it more partnerships that helped you do your work in a non-financial way?
I would say in a non-financial way. However, the partnership that we did develop with the Walmart Foundation come from a direct impact of CGI due to how we thought deeply about the work that we already do in the realm of juvenile justice, and for an example. And so it was an area of work that we just hadn't thought about, but how it was already very well positioned across barbershops and working with young people. So it was a no-brainer. And so but until being a part of CGI, I don't think I would have been able to think of it that way. And so it has allowed for us to be more, think more broader in terms of the ecosystem that these people live in every day and the problems that they're suffering beyond mental health. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It definitely linked us into the ecosystem in a very particular way. A lot of things that happen around maternal health are linked into Medicaid, for example. And so being connected with CGI and through those partnerships, it allowed us to make connections in different states with people who are steeped in a level of awareness around Medicaid, for example. So as we think about our own work and how we use our philanthropic dollars to help advance particular causes, that has been like one of many things that's been very beneficial for us.
Thank you very much. Liz, Lorenzo, thank both of you for joining us tonight. And Stephanie, let me turn it back over to you.
Well, this has been a really incredible conversation, kind of a little trip down memory lane, Bob. So thank you for reminding us of the origin of CGI and how it has evolved over the years. And I'm so excited about this year's annual meeting. Lots to look forward to. If you all are interested in learning more about CGI, I would highly recommend going to our Clinton Foundation website, which is clintonfoundation.org, and clicking on the CGI tab, and you can learn more about it. Watch some of the sessions virtually, and get involved. I think we all have a role to play. That's one of the lessons that CGI has really brought home to me is regardless of where you are, where you come from, what sector, we all have a role to play. Some very large, some very small, but it all makes an impact. So thank you all. Thanks to our Clinton Center members who make these type of programs possible. We're very grateful, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next Clinton Presidential Center Presents. Drive safe.